أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين. Indeed, Allah is not timid to present an example, that of a mosquito or what is smaller than it, and those who have believed know that it is the truth from their Lord. But as for those who disbelieve, they say, what did Allah intend by this as an example? He misleads many thereby and guides many thereby, and He misleads not except the defiantly disobedient. The fasiqeen, the defiantly disobedient. This was a section which we didn't finish last week. We started talking about Jannah and Hur'ain and everything else, and we forgot. We took a side quest. We went off the rails a little bit. I was speaking about Jannah and descriptions of Jannah, and Alhamdulillah, it was good. And that's the thing. We have to stop at the Qur'an and actually at Allah. What He encourages us to. وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. This is a hukm in the Qur'an. Give glad tidings those of Iman and do good deeds. That for them are guarded. That's what that ayat we spend a long time for, and that's always will be there. And we have to. So then this part was left. You could say the second half. So this, indeed, Allah is not timid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not shy away from giving very simple examples. Why simple example? Because Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, which is the most important thing in Islam, has to be presented to everybody. You can't make it into a complicated philosophy. Simple examples are given that the most intelligent will benefit from that, right? And the most educated will benefit from that. But it will not deprive, because else if you make it too complicated or these simple examples are not there, then, and they're not like, simple does not mean it's something that's faulty. It's just that Allah gives simple examples so everybody is on the same page about the most essential things. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, indeed Allah is in present example that of a mosquito, something very small, a fly, a bee, right? Isn't it like people now do a PhD in one insect? You know, so you can intellectually go into a mosquito and spend your whole life in a mosquito. And the things, there's people, when it comes to malaria, they have to study the life cycle of these things, and they spend their whole life. Or a fly. There's someone spent on a dung beetle 30 years, of their life. Right? You don't even have that's not beetles, that's one beetle. Right? Now, you don't have the lifespan to study another beetle. Like you spend on a fly, now you don't have time, you don't have 30 years to spend on a mosquito. So this one example, although it may seem like a simple example, it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that example like something even small, insignificant, but it's not small. Actually, in this one example, you can go so far, and this is reminder is there to Allah made the deen. See, deen is simple, it's easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made ease in deen, and it's accessible. We complicate things, like we over analyze it and we over structure. We make things very, very complicated, very difficult. Sometimes you take a simple thing. I was studying one book. There's one alim, I won't mention name, but so when we're studying it, and this is like in the Mufti course, training for that. So the book is, so the teacher said this sheikh, very famous sheikh from the Middle East, he goes, he's very good, he's got a gift for breaking down complex things, make them simple. But sometimes he goes so far in making the simple things simple that it becomes more difficult. Because by the end of it, it actually becomes more complicated. But actually it was very straightforward. And he's got a gift for making difficult things very accessible, but then sometimes he goes too far, he explains it so much it becomes even more complicated. It's human nature. I was talking to one alim in Pakistan, we're talking about tafsir, and he said, it is a miracle of the Qur'an that when you people will find, there's no flaws in the Qur'an. Every tafsir has something people will find something to criticize. Every tafsir, somebody will have something to say about it, from this angle or from this angle. Because that's a miracle of the Qur'an. Because the Qur'an, you can't do that with. The tafsir that is trying to explain it can be criticized. And saying, he goes, that's not even in there, because that's a human endeavor. Well, the Qur'an is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this human being, despite all his efforts and so forth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the people, and in this time there is an infatuation with technology, an infatuation for human achievements in terms of development and technology and so forth. However, this can be and this is not something new. If you read in the Quran, Qawms talked about their development, what they made. Then Ad and Samud and what they built, and other nations talk about their technology at their level in their time. And they would look at this, we got these gardens. Fir'aun talked about it, talked about what they've achieved in terms of irrigation or dams or whatever they might have achieved. This is not something new. This should not be a means of taking you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the process of this, like people are reminded, the Quran reminds, with very simple examples, that you have don't let all of these things, the complexity of this world, forget about the most essential thing, that is akhirah, and that your Rabb, and that you have to pray to your Rabb. This is like the most fundamental, basically, the reason why you're created. If all of these things, you become very sophisticated, very developed and so forth, but then in the process that you lose Allah, and you lose your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a pointless exercise then. There are a person that doesn't know anything about this technology, lived in the past in a very simple village. He had his goats and he had his sheep and he had his field, and he's better than you with all your developments and your iPads and all the cameras and technology and so forth that you're using. He's better than you because he's more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's got more ikhlas, he's got more love of Allah, more fear of Allah, more taqwa. Isn't he a better person in the dictionary of Qur'an? So, and you are enamored by your own creations and your own efforts. And we are given certain technologies, right? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, and that is held in high esteem, that that this human being, and it can only be produced through following the Qur'an, following the Sunnah, following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmullah, in his book Al-Furqan Bayna Awliya Rahman wa Awliya Shaitan, the criterion between the friends of Rahman and the friends of Shaitan, that from the miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the mu'jizat, the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the mu'jiz Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, those who follow his sunnah, Allah gives them karamat, miraculous acts, things that are out of the ordinary, that are given to non-prophets. And many examples that du'as get accepted. Like in Shah Waliullah Muhaddis Dehli rahmatullah is mentioned, I was sitting and I realized that the brothers in the mosque, his like friends and the community, they were moving away from each other. They were like, you could feel like we were moving far away from each other, like in terms of the hearts. We were being disconnected. So I sat down and made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I watched how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought us back closer together. Right? Families move away from each other, become like strangers. This is the time that we live in. Right? But do you understand like how powerful a mu'min is, that he can correct not just like his financial, his barakah and his money, but also relationships. That this sheikh sat down, he's a great muhaddis, rahmullah ta'ala, and he sat down, then I saw the people, how they come back, they're coming back. Like we have this technology, like this technology, and look at Alim 250, 300 years ago, the one who said this, he said, look at the concern, what they're keeping an eye on, that our hearts we're becoming far away from each other. The brotherhood is decreasing, right? Someone said to me today, Uber driver, I was today is Muslim, and he said to me, I've been in Melbourne 5 months. The brothers in the masjid have not given salam to me. Not this masjid, another masjid he was talking about. 5 months I've been coming to the masjid. He was from New Zealand, he lived in New Zealand, and he said the community was there very, in a small town. So of course, smaller community, everyone knows each other. And obviously you come here, but the people, we don't sometimes realize that sometimes people are just known piety. They're not even giving salam to other brothers. And again, I said Melbourne's a busy place, and we're running here and there and so forth, trying to make excuses and so forth. I said, you're right, that's not good. 5 months is a long time. Someone didn't give you salam. One brother came once in the masjid where I was imam, and he comes into the masjid, and I don't know what I saw him come into the masjid. He's like he's got a hair down to here. It looks like he's like in metal, like he's a heavy metal sort of guy. He was Malaysian, and he was like he had a certain look. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just, sometimes you're in a good mood or whatever, and you give salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and just smiled or whatever to him. He said, I went to so many mosques, they always look at me and they look away. He goes, and look, I didn't do like some sort of active dawah and like reach out or something. I just like not even think about it. So a lot of things you don't even think about. But for him, that was something that made him connect to the masjid, and he started coming to just giving salam nicely. So we sometimes here I am telling people off about their kids, But anyway, but it's the Muslim is very valuable in the sight of Allah subhanahu. His du'as are very, very valuable, and Allah subhanahu makes the difference between the mu'mineen and the kuffar very clear. What is the worth of all this technology if you don't recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And on the other side, and we Muslims also sometimes think like this. We don't realize what we have. We have with us people whose du'as get accepted. Mustajabu da'wat in the ummah is a real thing. Sa'd bin Waqqas took a whole army over in Qadisiyah, in the Battle of Qadisiyah in Persia. He took, in Iraq, he took a whole army over the water, prayed 2 rakat and said, go. He was Mustajabu da'wat, his du'as were accepted. We have these people in this ummah, we don't value. We only feel if they make a nice camera, they're making nice phones, they're making this bridge, they're making these cars and so forth. We look at only these things. We don't realize the real deal is with us. It's just that we don't, we're failing there, we're failing here as well. But we actually, and if we're failing, we're only looking at their material wealth. Then today I was giving dars and we're talking about malaik and qadr. 2 things that are always we're in, but we don't realize. Qadr is always constantly we're in it, we're being subjected to it, isn't it? Allah's decree, divine decree is written, and what's happening, so many things happening. But the material, what we taught in our school, nothing is mentioned of that. Imagine. Second thing was malaika. Why we need to have malaika? There's malaika kiram and katibin with us. There's munkar nakir in the grave. There's the hafadha, they're protecting people. There are malaika that he goes, nahnu awliyaukum. We are your friends in the dunya. Ayat said, Rabbuna summa istaqamu. The angels come at the time of death and they give glad time. We were your friends in the worldly life. This ayat is in the Qur'an, Surah Fussilat, isn't it? And he goes, we were your friends in the worldly life. Like they're hanging around us. I said, because we'll be with you in the hereafter. They'll be there at the qabr. They'll be in the friends, right? Like friends are not, like, I was just mentioning today, sort of kind of came in the class. I didn't even prepare this. This is not something I said, we're going to meet them one day. We actually got to get to know them. All these malaika, these hafadha, these kiram katibin, all these guys that are hanging around us our whole life, we're going to meet them one day. Like, it's like meeting a long lost friend. These guys, I call them guys, they're malaika, just in a way to make it closer. We're going to meet them. These guys were like our real friends. They were like writing our good deeds, inshallah, and hopefully not writing our sin, inshallah, we make tawbah. And they were like watching us. What's the riwayah? In Ibn Majah's riwayah, that Allah laughs at. Surah in Nasa, Ibn Majah's riwayah is that Allah laughs. Some guys crying in desperation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels, yadhak, it's mentioned, that he laughs at him. Just imagine like a stadium full of malaika laughing at the guy who's crying about his problems. Because he can't see the maghfirah he's getting. He can't see his sins being, Allahumma sayyib al-nafi'a, is a dua for rain. Allah make it a beneficial downpour. Therefore, we don't appreciate what we have because we're also extremely materialistic as well. Madda has become the belief of the time. Just believe in madda, material. And not understanding the madda has angels appointed over them. That's the ghaibi system, unseen. Allah doesn't need the malaika. To believe that malaika can benefit or harm in themselves is shirk. To ask the malaika is shirk. But to not believe in the malaika is kufr. Takes a person out of Islam. And they are around, they're doing works. We only ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Malaika, but they've got jobs, they're around us, and we're totally oblivious to it. It's therefore, we have to be mindful. Sometimes we're so materialistic, we do very well in the dunya, become even more materialistic, instead of attributing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example of the mosquito, and Allah subhanahu, only the mind that is influenced by shaitan comes up with an objection to this. It's shaitan's influence to criticize Allah's decision. Right? Isn't it? That's where it started from Adam alayhi salam, which we'll start next week inshallah, in the Ayat of Baqarah next week. Isn't it shaitan that objected to the sajda, put his own logic forward before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hukm, order, he was told to make sajda and he refused to make sajda, the singular sajda that he had to make, only one sajda he had to make. But it was against his nafs, it's against his ego, and he refused to do that. So shaitan is always objecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He objected to Allah's hukam. So he's putting this objection into the hearts of a human, to object to why Allah did this. So they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, those who have iman, they accept this straight away. Those who don't have iman, they say, ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا? What does Allah intend by this? Like putting it down. What's the point of this? Like why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like that? The words Allah mentioned in the Qur'an, so we take ibrah from. Like we shouldn't talk like them ever. Like why is their speech and their conversation, their dialogues are mentioned, so we don't talk like them. So then Allah subhanahu and the mu'min, what does a mu'min do? فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَيَعْلَمُوا أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. This is a haqq from Allah. This is Allah's prerogative. What examples He wants to give is His choice, subhanahu wa ta'ala. How complicated the example is, how simple example, that's His choice. He knows better. He's Al-Hakim, He's Al-Khabir, He's Al-Alim, He's the all-knowing, the all-informed. He knows what is the example that should be given. If I don't understand it, I don't have an objection. It's just my foolishness and my lack of knowledge, right? And we'll learn that next week when the angels are told, that when they were asked about, Allah mentioned to them that He's creating Adam alayhi salam, and said He's going to kill people, and they're going to cause bloodshed, and they're going to cause corruption in the land. And Allah said, put the things before and said, name these things. What are the names of the things? And they said, Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. That goes in Subhan, glory to Allah subhanahu. They didn't say we don't know or you didn't teach us. They put it in such beautiful words. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We don't have knowledge except that what you have taught us. There's one book, Hilli Talib al-Ilm, it mentions in there, Man dakhal fi ilmi shibran takabbara. Whoever enters into knowledge, one handspan becomes arrogant. And whoever enters into knowledge, two handspan, he becomes humble. And the one who enters into knowledge, three handspans, like he goes deep into knowledge, he said, La adri, I don't know. The problem is we get stuck in the first one. We think we know, and then we insist on that we know. And then we insist on correcting people. And then not just that, you come attacking without knowledge. If you come with, the people with knowledge don't come like that. The people with knowledge, they come humbly and they ask, look, you said this, is this correct what you said this? You said this in the khutbah, people do it all the time. But the problem is the one that come who don't know and insist that they are right without having studied anything, without anything having to say. And then they put it in ways, like, are you more knowledgeable or your teacher? There's one brother came to me, he goes, are you more knowledgeable or your teacher? I said, my teacher. He's my teacher, obviously, like I studied from him. He said, your teacher said this, you're saying this. I said, I know what I'm saying. I know which book I read it in. And I know the alim wrote, and I know exactly what I'm saying. And I know 100% that I'm correct on this because I didn't make it from myself. I read the book and I understood it properly, inshallah ta'ala. Then I asked him, what did you ask my teacher? He asked a totally different question. So he got a different answer. Now he's using that answer, which got nothing to do with what I was saying, to say that. So the thing is that the ones who are knowledgeable, they come and they ask with knowledge. And they have a backing. They don't come guns blazing. They come, they ask and to clarify. And the ones who don't know, they already have decided emotionally because they've been triggered. They're triggered because they're talking with their emotion. It's very hard to talk. It's hard to explain a fiqh masala when people are shouting. It's impossible. My teacher, Mufti Dr. Shabir, the Moon Hilal Sadi person from Sydney, Mona Shabiri, he goes, when the people start shouting, it's like, how are you supposed to explain anything of deen, talk about deen? That's not the place to talk about. That's not the way. You're supposed to speak in a sensible environment. We're talking about deen. So the shaitani dhahniyat, like my mentality, is what causes this type of question to occur. And tawheed is a very simple matter. I mentioned this before, joke. My father, rahmahullah, mentioned a guy who did a PhD in tawheed. My father said to him, La ilaha illallah. And my father was a graduate of Kulliyat Usul al-Din, which is a faculty of Aqidah and of Da'wah, and he was specifically, that is his specialty in firq, batila, the false sects and so forth. And he said, La ilaha illallah. Like, what do you mean tawheed is good? He did a PhD on tawheed, he spent 4 years on. He was joking with him, but he say, what do you mean? Like, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, we're Muslims, Allah is one, that's it. We only pray to one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you can do PhD, you can do multiple PhDs in tawheed. right? And there's depth in it, and there's in Tawheed as well, right? So it's not to belittle what the brother did, but at the same time, La ilaha illallah is very simple. There's only one Allah, you know. There's one Allah. There's only one Allah subhanahu wa taala, and there's only one worthy of worship. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qul Allahu ahad. Very simple. Like, it's very simple that everybody can grasp this idea, unless someone has some thing. Some ulama, they can't, and it's not a criticism. When they speak in front of ulama, the ulama listen and they benefit, right? The average person will not. I've seen it with my own eyes. Some ulama cannot speak to the average person. Like, they academically, that's just the way they are. They's talking. Mawlana Anwar Shah Kashmir, rahmatullah, my father's teacher, he rahmatullah ta'ala, he was like that. When he used to talk, he used to go above. People didn't know what he's talking about. You know, it was a certain level of genius, and but that's not for most of the Muslims of the world. Are very simple Muslims, right? When you go for Hajj and Umrah, we see this. We are the very sophisticated, Australian, Muslims, Allah. But it's actually the people, when you go in Hajj, that's where you see, oh, that's what the Ummah looks like. And that's not the whole Ummah. That's the ones who can afford it. That's probably not the majority of the Ummah. That's the ones among those communities who can afford it, who could come. Very simple people. It's not a criticism, that's the reality of the Ummah. Right? We have to learn, Jalisu Fuqara, sit with the poor people. You have to learn. I remember I was in Delhi, in India, and there's a guy named Noshad. He used to take us to, I mentioned this morning as well, he used to take us to Lohar, like the scrap metal guy, right? And it's a very dirty place, it's very dusty and so forth, and it's like dealing with scrap metal. He used to go, and scrap metal doesn't mean like scrap metal here. He has like, he's got a yard, and it's like very big machines and stuff. It's like a very simple thing, collecting little bits of rubbish, basically, like small things and waste and so forth. So he used to go make us sit there with him and talk with him. Then he used to like get us invited. He used to tell like someone, guys, these are guests that come from Australia. And Muslims, they're hospitable. So he kind of like imposed himself. These are people that he knew that make chai for them. So then the lady would go to the side. The room is like this big, The lady would be in the corner wrapped up in a chadar, in a shawl, and she'll be pumping the kerosene stove, and she'll be making chai. Right? He said, he goes, I know, like, you people from the West, this shocks you. I want you to see this. Especially if you're raised up in Australia, you've never seen these things. Because I know you're uncomfortable. I know that you feel that you're imposing them. They're honored, they're happy. Guests that come. I remember it was in Egypt that this lady, she owned an internet cafe. Her son owned the internet cafe. It was many years ago. Like, you know what internet cafes are? I have to explain to the young guys. Before, we didn't have internet like on our phones, and sort of like we had to go to a place and pay money and then use a computer to check our email. 15 years ago, like, no, not a very long time ago. So you might not, it's a very rare archaeological thing that we have to explain to you, but it was literally a decade ago. So she went to the internet cafe, and the son runs with he was out, the mum was there, and then she asked, he goes, where are you from? And I said from Australia. He goes, Ahsan Nas, the best of people. Then my friend was he's from Melbourne as well, Lebanese, and he said, where are you from? He goes, from Lebanon. He goes, Ahsan Nas. I thought we were Ahsan Nas. I mean, and then at the end of the we use the internet, check our emails and whatnot. It was like one guinea, like the local currency, and she said, Halaft, I've taken an oath, qasam, I've taken an oath. It's like, it's not even like 20, 30 cents, but I've taken an oath not to take anything from you. That's Muslim. In their simplicity and so forth, you see hospitality. Like the one alim, he became Muslim, is a white American in the 70s. One of the reasons was when he's in Egypt, because the lady went and he was covered in dust, got dusty, and this lady came out, old lady came out from some like alley. She thought he was like a poor person. She didn't know he's a European, Western American. So she came out of somewhere and she got money, she put it in his hand and ran off quickly. They're doing it for the sake of Allah. They don't want to be known that they're giving, they were giving secret sadaqah. She thought it was just like a poor person, just quickly giving money and just ran off, disappeared. He didn't have a chance to even say thank you to her. And that was one of the reasons why he became Muslim. So he would take us into, it's Muslim, most Muslims in the world, most of human beings actually, not just Muslims, live a very simple, basic life. This is a reality. And we might become, it's sometimes very hard for some people to speak at the average person level. Not even simple people like farmers. Simple, like I remember I was in Pakistan once, and there's an old man, Pakhtun, like he said to me, he goes, where are you from? I said, from Australia. With Dakale comes again. Because where is this village? So Australia is like a village to him. He doesn't understand that Australia is like a country. Trying to explain to him Australia is a country, it's a continent, it's like, 15 hours flight, all that. He goes, where is this village? So there are people like, but then his akhlaq, his hospitality, his generosity, right? His humanity, like is so much more than so many sophisticated people in three-piece suits. So it's therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, simplicity. Remember, even in our weddings and so forth, simplicity, like Islam expects simplicity, not to be stupid, but simplicity is the mizaj of Islam. Sahaba radiallahu anhum were not, it's a tabi'ah of Islam. Sahaba radiallahu anhum were not simple because they were poor. That's what Islam expects from us. Deen is easy, accessible, and practiced in an easy way. It's accessible. It goes along with fitrah, right? It's not to be complicated. I'm going a lot into this because it's something that we, especially live in this country, we have to pay attention to. So they objected, and their objection is like the person who's got a problem in a stomach, like he's got someone is sick. Milk is a very nutritious food. It's a drink, food, and it's a complete meal, right? Milk is a complete meal actually. It's got fat, sugars, it's got everything. It's got all the macros, all right? It's a complete meal. But somebody who's got a stomach problem, milk is very bad for them. So their reaction a very nutritious food is not good for, like that gives you a lot of strength and so forth. If you're sick, if you have a stomach problem, it's actually, it makes your sickness worse. These kuffar, they've been told this example, they're sick already from inside. Spiritually, they're sick. So they have an allergic reaction. Right? They have an allergic reaction. As soon as an example is given in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an example, they get triggered. Something happens, they have a reaction to it because they're sick inside. So, but the mu'min, look at the reaction, exact same thing. Right? يَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. They know that is haqq from their Lord. And on the other side, they say, what is Allah? Like they have a certain reaction to it because they're sick inside, which will be mentioned. And so these spiritual sickness they have of shirk, nifaq, which is the ultimate sickness, nifaq, and these things that could create, the Qur'an creates light in the heart, but for them it actually is it makes them worse. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Qur'an, فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجْسًا إِلَىٰ رِجْسِهِمْ. They already have rijs, filth in their heart. They already have the sickness in their heart. When it actually more to piles it on for them. So they have a negative, and not just that, they go further. Like if you have a doctor in the area, and the doctor moves into the suburb or the area of the village, and the people that will go for the treatment, inshallah, they will be cured. They will take the medicine, take his advice, like that. But then there's a doctor in the area. Instead of going to the doctor, they start an opposition campaign, and that's what people did. They used to do this. Anbiya alayhimus salam. They came with the medicine. They came with the shifa for all their problems, right? Including our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Qur'an is shifa. It's mentioned. It's called shifa, and they for everything. It's shifa for everything. And so what happens is they start opposing. The Qur'an is hidayat for everybody except for the three. It's hidayat for the one who wants to make his ta'alluq, connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qur'an will be hidayat for him. The one who wants this, it'll be hidayat for him, guidance for him. Number one. Number two, it is the one who wants to, I don't know how to translate this, but it's, if he wants to make relationships, this is quwwat tabi'i, like his natural relationships, bodily relationship, like physical relationship, and actually social relationship, because that's related to the human being's existence, physical existence. It's not a spiritual matter per se, but the way he interactions with others, and the way he lives with others, he wants it to be good. Qur'an will be hidayat for him as well. He wants to make the way he lives and exists among people good. Qur'an will be hidayat for him. The third one is the one who wants to bring peace in the world. Peace in the world. He wants society at a greater level to be good. People, societies to function well. Qur'an will be hidayat for this person as well. And this comes in the subsequent ayat explaining the fasiqeen, the wicked ones, these disobedience. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Alladina, now description is given of the people who cannot accept the Qur'an. They could not accept the amthal, the examples that they gave. The ones who have the sickness. الذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك هم الخاسرون. Those who break the covenant of Allah after contracting it and sever that which Allah has ordered to be joined and cause corruption on earth, it is those who are the losers. So these three things, if his person is free from the opposite of this, which I just mentioned before, that if they're empty from these three things, that they have no desire to connect with Allah, no desire to live well with family, relations, society, and so forth, have good relations and be good to people, and they don't have any inkling of society should be peaceful and people should not, there should not be corruption in the land. These are the people, they will never get hidayat from the Qur'an. If they are like this, unless these things are gotten rid of, right? So the Qur'an cannot be a hadi for such a person. For example, like when it comes to that natural relationship, like breaking relationship with your parents or relatives. Qata rahmi is one of the most major sins. Like it's one of the worst sins is qata rahmi, like to break relations. Or that they have no intention of ever being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To have no connection, no inkling of like even a little bit of trying to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or that they have not to use their intelligence for nizam, arranging society in a better form. He wants fasad, they want fasad to disappear, right? The good works that come, society is good society because some people, they are mukhlis and they want society to do well. They want crime to reduce. They want zulm to finish. Didn't Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that the Islam نمخك يا رجمشو مكيكي زوانان رجمشو zulm naki حلف فضول. There's an agreement that the young men of like the movers and shakers, the upcoming leaders, they got together that we will not allow anybody to be oppressed, right? Basically, in short, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a party to that. He said, if I was invited in Islam to that, I'll take part in that. This is like expected. So this is that a person contributes. And in the countries, I went to a certain Muslim country. I don't know if I should mention it, but because the people from that country might get upset, or the other ones might be happy. And so I came back. My father, rahmahullah, before he was in the hospital. So I gave him went to his conference. There were ulama there were this, and it was about Malaysia actually. And my father said, he said, the reason why that they have that is because there are people that are mukhlis at the top. It's not perfect. It's not Medina Munawwara at time of Rasulullah Khulafa Rashideen. But he said there are mukhlisin at the top. That's why there are people who care about the society running, or there are people that are sincere. Because of that, it doesn't mean it's perfect. Obviously not. There's good people, bad people everywhere. But he said because we have too much munafiqat. My father said we have too much in our culture. We have too much hypocrisy, and because of that we can't get anything off the ground. So these things do matter. So there's a third level, which is the fasad in the lands, fasad in the lands. There are people who have fasad in their societies, and they want fasad. They don't use their aql to get rid of this fasad. Their aql is actually they like fasad. They like people fighting between each other because they can steal everything. They like people being distracted. Like they actually, what was the benefit? What's the enjoyment? Like the enjoyment is that you make financial gain in the misery of others. So, and these fasiqeen, they break, so yanquduna ahd Allah, they break Allah's the agreements. So anything that will get them, what is the ahad with Allah? What is the agreement with Allah? Is that we become His worshipful slaves. They get rid of that. They break those agreements of Sharia, of the deen, of ibadah. They don't pray. They leave all these things. So that's the first thing. Second thing, they yaqta'una ma amar Allah, as I read before. They cut off what Allah has ordered, enjoined to sustain, to keep relations, family relations. right? These people who make fun of the ayat of Allah and the examples are given. What does Allah want by this? These are the characteristics. That's why they can't get hidayah from that example. And thirdly is the one that makes corruption in the land. And if these three motivations are not in the heart of a person, fulfilling the agreement of Allah, that means being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, silat rahmi, joining relation with people, not to the qata rahmi, like breaking relation, and aman, wanting not to, the opposite of fasad in the land, right? These three, if they're not in the person, until he has the motivation, the desire for these three, he cannot take benefit from the, like if these three motivations are not in the person, he cannot take benefit from the Qur'an. And the Qur'an cannot be a guide from such a person. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. How can you disbelieve in Allah when you were lifeless and He brought you to life, and He will cause you to die, then He'll bring you back to life, and then to Him will be the return. And that's as straightforward as a reminder that how can you have kufr? They're being addressed. How can you disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you were lifeless, you had no existence, you had no life. You were created for something in the womb of your mother, for something lifeless. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you life. Then Allah gave you death. Then Allah is going to give you life again. And for Him, you're going to be returning back to Him. هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن سبع سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم. It is He who created you for you all of that which is on the earth. Allah created for this human being everything. This whole universe is created for this human being. Then He directed Himself to the heaven. He made istiwa, His being above all creation, in brackets, and made them 7 heavens, and He is knowing of all things. Right? So, how can you disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who made you, who provided everything in the world for you? Your biggest muhsin, the one that is doing ihsan on you, you don't even recognize the one who's done all these things for you in your whole life. Like he's your biggest muhsin, the one who shows the most kindness to you. He put his ground for you. If you have some intelligence, and he goes, your intelligence is taken to opposition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like the way it's being asked, when you feel it in the question, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ? Like how can you disbelieve? Right? This question is being proposed. Not saying like believe, that's there as well. But he goes, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ? Like how is it? Like it's a question being asked, and a question requires an answer. Allah is imposing on them to, and on us as well, that to think. Like how is it you disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like what's causing you to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's one, and I'll finish off with this. What's the ayat in Surah Infitar? The question. So what is it? Infitar. No, the question. إذا السماء انفطر وإذا الكواكب انتثروا. سؤال صديقي. إذا السماء انفطر وإذا الكواكب انتثروا وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدم وأخرت يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم. I'm not Hafiz, and the Hafiz are as slow as me. But ما غرك بربك الكريم. This question is asked. What deluded you? What tricked you? What deceived you about your Lord, the Most Kind? And what I was reading the tafsir once, on Alim said, غرني كرم الكريم. If I was asked this question, Judge, what made you forget Allah that you disobeyed Him? If this question is asked to me on the Day of Judgment, the karam of the Most Kareem, the kindness of the Most Kind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deceived me. Because He's so kind, I do wrong, He doesn't punish me. Right? He gives me a chance. I can make a chance to make tawbah. I have a chance to do good deeds still. He gives me a long life to fix up my mistakes. He gives me a chance, invites me to the mosque again. Because the karam of the Kareem deluded me, tricked me. You know, because He's so kind and so generous that deluded me, tricked me. That I can get away with it. I take chances. Na'udhu billah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I take chance, do wrong because He's so kind, because He's not giving immediate punishment to me. Because what deluded about your Lord who's the most kind? It's a question. It's there in Surah in the last juz. And he said, if I was asked this question, what tricked you? If I would get stuck on the Day of Judgment, He's got his answers ready. If I get asked this question on the Day of Judgment, what did trick you about your Lord? The kindness of the Most Kind deluded me. Allah is asking, talking. The book of Allah subhanahu, it's a book of Allah and it's a kalam of Allah. كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا. How can you, like Allah, and this is the way to their tabligh to the fasiqeen is by tadhkir bi ala'illah wa tadhkir bi ma ma'ad al-maut. The reminder to the fasiqeen, people who are in this condition. As Shah Waliullah mentioned, that the three tadhkirs in the Qur'an. The tadhkir, the reminder of, encouragement of the signs of Allah, the bounties of Allah. And the reminder of death and what is after death. Right? And what was the third one? Ayyamillah, the destruction of previous nations and how Allah saved certain nations, destroyed other nations. So here he said, fasiqeen, the tabligh to the conclusion, he said, to this group of people is to remind them, and this last ayat, these last two are reminding of Allah. Allah created from something Allah made the sky. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so great, right? He made istiwa on his arsh, he's so great, right? Despite that, he made the earth for you. He doesn't need you, right? But he made the earth for you and everything in the earth for you. Tadhkir bi ala illah, the ni'am of Allah subhanahu, the bounties of Allah subhanahu, the signs of Allah, and tadhkir fima ba'd al-maut, to remind, how do you get a fasiq, and including us, how do you get a fasiq off the track? Is to remind him of Allah's favors and kindness and remind him there's a life, there's death. Okay, you will alive, then you will die, then you come back to life again. You're going to be returning back to Allah. Two things. Tadhkir bi ala illah, tadhkir bima ba'd al-maut, to remind of the death and qiyamah. And so Qabr, Day of Judgment, Jannah, Jahannam, and we should, inshallah next week we're doing this in one of the courses, but we should have the mizan in front of us, the scale on Day of Judgment. It's a real thing. We have to face, our deeds are going to be weighed. There's a discussion, what is weighed? Books are weighed, the person is weighed. There's discussion among the fuqaha about this. There's different dalil for them, all could be true together, right? And the a'mal actually weighed themselves, they come in a form, right? And how that is, and there's actually mention of how it is as a light that comes out of the scale, and many details are there. But the scale is a thing that we have to confront. Sirat is a sirat mustaqim in this life, and also sirat is in the hereafter, continues. Those who are going to be, whether we're going to make it across, may Allah make us cross the sirat successfully, right? And also judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? The mizan is there, the sirat is there. These are things should be clear in front of us. We should be reminding ourselves there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those are the things, and that's in a beautiful way put together in Surah Fatiha, Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the Day of Judgment. Interesting, owner, we should don't consider time, someone is the owner of a time. But Allah is owner of that day and everything in it. Nobody else is an owner. No one calls, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns this world and time in this world as well. But he explicitly says, he's Malik of the Day of Judgment. He's the owner of the day. And somebody, qira'at is Malik, the king of, he is the sovereign, he's the king. And he's the owner. And he will take Yawmiddin, the day of decision, the day of judgment. All the accounts will be settled. That is coming. And the book of deeds. The third thing, we should have our book of deeds. These guys are writing. They're not stopping. These malaika, they're not stopping. They are writing everything that we say. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, Allah write this dars in our mizan hasanat, in our scale, it is in a book of good deeds, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we say in here. Jazakum Allah.